Hello, once again, and welcome to, of course, episode 3 of this series from Semrush, or Semrush, the usual, around all things Google Analytics. Welcome to those of you particularly, a little bit like you are in a frequent flyer program on British Airways or Cathay Pacific or any other frequent flyer program of your choice. Welcome specifically to those who have been here before for episodes 1 and episodes 2. Now, I am still Aidan. And she is still Jill, and we are still from the colouring in department. And on this particular occasion, we're talking about something quite different. Now, in episode 1, if you remember, you can cast your mind way back, and there's a link to both episode 1 and episode 2, I should say, on the landing page through which you signed up for this webinar so graciously. And we talked about the admin setup in episode 1 months ago now, kind of in the rearview mirror. And it was really around making sure that your data is clean and clear and makes sense. And most importantly, that you are not misreporting on the hard work that you were doing. So that episode's really around data rubbish in, data rubbish out. You lose your job, everyone's sad, or you get promoted. And really the distinction between this thing or indeed the other thing. Now, we talked about creating views and creating properties, and we give you free templates so that you could ultimately start to audit your own account. And of course, we talked a lot about analytics in the capacity of pure, undying love, because quite frankly, we love analytics. At a base level, that's true. Episode 2 was a little bit different. Episode 2 is really more around your external work. So around your marketing, around validating all the stuff that you do on a daily basis to make sure that everyone knows that you in the marketing department, whether you be a search person or a social person or a content person, that you can really validate what you do, you can measure what's going on, and you can figure out who's signing up for the webinar, to what extent, and perhaps even why, if you dig into it a little bit further. So who gets the credit for all of the work that you're doing? And we like to think that would be you, but not always the case, I should say. Now, in this particular session, which is probably much more important in truth, because that's what you're here for, we're going to be talking about events. We're going to be talking about goals, and we're going to be talking really in many ways what's actually happening on your website. So webinar episode 1 in the mini series around setup, episode 2 around tracking your marketing, and episode 3 now, what did they do when they actually got to the website? So we'll be talking about events that we should be tracking on the website or the app. We'll be talking about how to actually make sense of events, so structure it properly. We'll be referencing a number of different tools and a number of different resources actually that are really helpful for this, because it can be a little bit impenetrable at times. And we're talking really about how you can use things like segmentation to look at your data in a different way. Now, it does not change your data. It looks at your data. It's kind of like wearing a pair of glasses while you're looking at it. And of course, as is usual, as the case with both myself and with Jill, you get a free template that you can use to do the stuff we're talking about over the next 45 minutes to 1 hour. Usual run of play. We'll be taking some questions, of course, predominantly at the end. That's kind of really what we're up to in this particular session. So a huge welcome to absolutely everybody who's here. And indeed, really, Jill, if you could kind of, and I know I kind of summarized really what's going on in this particular session already. If you could give me, if you'd be so gracious, a big fat hello, of course, as usual, and a bit of really your own takeaway on what you're talking about for the next 45, just while we kind of get ourselves organized and let those people click on those UTM codes, see episode 2, and get into this webinar. Jill.
Hello. So for me, the beautiful thing about event tracking, as you mentioned, it focuses on what do people actually do when they get to your website. And I love this because you're not a mind reader. I would love it if I had the skill. What's the guy from X-Men, Xavier, like his little hat, and he's like, oh, I can read into everybody's minds and see what people are doing. We don't have that skill, and we've not gone to Black Mirror territory where we've all got implants and we can understand what our users are doing. We have to rely on technology to do that for us. So I really like having event tracking set up on a website, and you can also use this for an app because it will give you those insights as to what people are doing. As we always say in all of these webinars, it's that data is a proxy for people. So yes, the data is going to tell you and will allude as to what you could be tracking. But let's hypothetically say how many people submit a form. You may find with your event data that people are struggling. You're going to still have to talk to people. You are going to have to blend the data with UX. It's an art and a science, marketing now. We can't get away with just having one lens. So event data is beautiful and wonderful and gorgeous, but with all the audits we've done and all the training we've done, there are a few hiccups along the way. So we're going to go through a tasty analogy on how to explain event tracking, which I'm really excited for.
Logistically speaking, as much as Jill is excited about food-based analytics analogies, more on that a little bit later. Hello to everybody on YouTube. Of course, you can see that I'm dwelling in the comment box anyway, along with the lovely team at Semrush. If you do have any questions, please do pop them in there. I will be curating them from there and from Twitter and from beyond. And thank you to those who've asked questions in advance of this particular session as well. I promise I'll get to as many of them as possible, along with the lovely and super inspirational Jill by the end of the session. Equally, this is being recorded. So hello, recording watchers. Thank you for attending. Thank you for watching the recording. So hello to you who are catching up a little bit later. I'm going to assume you're in a meeting at work. But with that, I am finally going to shut up, at least in the audio capacity. And I'm going to pass the reins over to, as ever, the inimitable Jill Quick. Jill, take it away.
Thank you, Aidan. I just love how you bring me in to these presentations. You make me sound awesome. Thank you. All right. So yes, analytics part 3. What do visitors do cracking events and goals in Google Analytics? So as I mentioned at the introduction to this webinar, we are focusing on what the hell is event tracking and how can you use it, best practices. It's as with anything with analytics, and me and Aidan were just talking about this today, it is a piece of code. If you go back to session 1, we're talking about a computer program here, and they will do what you tell it to do. But if the inputs are wrong, then the outputs aren't going to give you the information that you would like to have. So to get things started then, when we're thinking about event tracking in Google Analytics, the main thing that I'm looking at is I want to understand, what do users actually do on my website? Now, if you think about what Google already gives you, so if we go to our report interface and we scoochie on over to behavior, which is going to tell us what people do on our website. Yes, we can go to our all pages report. It will tell me the pages that people are looking at, the time on page, the bounce rate, how long they were there for. If we have configured our admin settings to have content grouping, then I can start to group together different types of content. But what it's not going to tell me in a hypothetical example are things like, do people share content? So if you have little buttons, which most websites do now, where you can share your articles or your content through a widget or some sort of plugin on Facebook or Twitter, Google will not track that for you. It will tell you somebody was on the page, will not tell you if they shared content. Now, if you are wanting to understand how well your marketing is doing in terms of the content that you're writing, that is a useful bit of information to understand which content gets shared the most across social media. And then you can drill down as to, well, which social media platform? If you can see that everybody's going bananas sharing it over Facebook, then I would steer my attention and do some investigations and some experimentations with promoting that content more on Facebook if my audience is giving me indication that they are there. The other thing it's not going to tell me is if you've got forms on your website, did anybody fill out the form? Now, forms for me, I always, well, I don't want to say that everybody's stupid, but it makes me feel stupid. I hate forms. Forms drive me crackers. I pay somebody at the post office to check my passport before I send it off because I just don't trust myself with forms. And you can be the most intelligent person in the world, give somebody a form on a website that's slightly complicated, and you'll really start to understand the personality of that person. Because if you've got a form that is badly laid out with bad UX and it's not clear, people are just going to get really frustrated and hit the back button. So with event tracking, I'm going to want to find out, does anybody actually get through the form? Do they get through half of it and give up and die? And that's when you've got some solid facts. And remember that quote that we had in our first presentation: without data, you are just another person with an opinion. If you can turn around to your boss or whoever pays the bills to say, look, I've got some data here that shows that people get through half the form and then they just give up. You've now got some data to say, I think we should do some user testing. I think we should revisit and do some A/B testing on this page, which is so much stronger than saying, I've got a gut feeling that people are struggling. That's not going to get the check signed for you. So event tracking is really good for that as well. Now think about things like telephone numbers when I'm on a mobile device. So mobile is a big thing. I don't need to bang the drum about that anymore. But if you've got a user that is on a mobile device and on your website and they click through on a telephone number, then Google's not going to record that. And again, I'm going to want to know if somebody has been on a mobile device and they've contacted my company through that mobile website. If you've got your company social media profile, so in addition to understanding, well, does anybody share the content on social media? Does anybody look at our social media? So your own Instagram or Twitter or LinkedIn or Facebook feeds, does anybody actually click on and have a little bit of a nosy? And again, have you got a particular social media profile that is more prominent than another one? Again, if your job is to try and get more traffic to your social profiles and to build a community, build an audience, if I've got data to show that, I don't know, Instagram is the strongest one, I'm going to make that button bigger. I'm going to make that the more prominent icon. And again, I'm going to have data to prove why I'm going to be doing that. Then think about pages where you have images going around and around and around, and people can click through those images. Now, I would like to know if anybody is skipping through those images or potentially tabbed content as well on these particular pages to see what are people doing, are they interacting, or do they not bother? And again, that data is going to be really, really useful. We talked about, do people get through a particular form? Did they then bother to hit submit or send or yes, I want to get in touch with you? If you do not have a thank you page, so this is where if I fill out a form, I get a thank you URL that says / thank you or whatever you've got. If you don't have that thank you landing page and it's just a submit button, so i.e. the page doesn't change, but a little pop-up might say, thanks, we've got your email, or somebody's going to have a look at this. Google will not be able to tell you if anybody submitted it, and we're going to be talking about goals, is a goal. For most people, if I've got somebody that submitted a form, and a lot of websites seem to be built this way now, where there is no thank you page, they just type in an email address or submit a form. Google will not tell you how many people did that. And I really want to tie all of my marketing to this, because then I can get more money for my marketing budgets and spend money on the things that are actually working and improving for me. Another kind of engagement style reason why I love event tracking, scroll reach. So Google will tell you how many people went on a page and the time and the bounce, and they won't tell you how far they got down that page. So I really like scroll reach, especially when you look back at metrics like bounce rate. And I've talked about bounce rate before, but just to go over it again. If somebody goes on a single page on your website and they don't go anywhere else, then Google's going to count that as a bounce. And some pages will always, always, always have a high bounce rate. Things like blog articles. You know, you've been on a train, you found an article on social media, you click through it, you read the article, you go on with your merry day. You go to Google, you type in a question, it gives you an answer. You go to the page, you read it, you skedaddle on with the rest of your day. It would be really interesting if you're a content person to be able to look back at your data to see, does anybody actually scroll down to the bottom of the page? And although we haven't got it in this deck, you can also use this for time on page as well, because Google doesn't necessarily calculate time on page as you would imagine. And I will loop back to that later, Aidan, at the end. Other things that you might want to have a look at that Google won't track: is people that actually click on an email address. So if you've got a contact page and it just says, hey, just email customer services at website.com or hello at website.com, if that person clicks that email address and it just pops open with whatever email service provider that you're using, again, Google is not going to tell you how many people did that. And again, that is a hard line in the sand. That's an indication of somebody that's wanting to have a conversation with you. And I want to trace those steps back so that I can understand, again, what my users are doing on my website and attribute it back to my marketing. Then think about tabbed content. So there's a lot of websites that I see that use this, and for good practice as well. I've seen it a lot in e-commerce sites, you know, where you have like accordions, where I've been buying a lot of products at the moment for a hen party for my sister-in-law at the moment. And on all of the pages, it's got a little bit of a description. And then there's a little plus sign. And if I click on that, it opens up and gives me more content. There are other websites where they're like tabs, like a folder tab, where the website URL stays the same, but I'm tabbing through that content. Again, Google isn't going to tell me that information unless I set this up with event tracking. It's just going to tell me people are on the page. So I don't know if they're going through to the delivery information, the descriptions, the step 1, 2, 3, 4. And again, I want to know how engaging that page layout is with data to start improving the design of my website and my marketing. Video is a big thing at the moment. So if you've got videos embedded on your website, did anybody play it? Did anybody pause it? How far did they get through that particular video? And just think how powerful that could be as a marketeer to turn around to your boss to say, I know how many people are watching videos on our website. Now I'm going to talk about how you can use segmentation to do some swanky retargeting at the end of this webinar. But to go through stuff that we went through in session 1 and 2, you can build segments in Google Analytics. So instead of looking at all of your data, you can just say, hey, show me everybody that just watched the video. And then you can isolate that particular bunch of users and see, do they spend more or less than people that didn't? And I've actually used this as an example where we had the board, we were going through budgets, and they were saying, do you know what, guys, you know, that money you spent on video, I can't see it attributed anywhere, and I don't know if it's improving the bottom line. So I think we're going to take that budget away. Now, we knew in our gut that it was improving the bottom line, but without data, you're just another person with opinion, my favorite quote again. So because we had event tracking set up, we were able to say to the board, well, actually, these are the most popular videos. This is how far people get through the videos. And with a segment, we were able to prove that people that watched a video spent 3 times more than people that didn't. That changed the conversation, and we got a much bigger budget to play around with the following year. So it's really, really valuable to get that information. Okay, so the process, I promised you a tasty analogy. There is the fabulous, the wonderful Aidan Carroll, forever immortalized as a chicken man. I love it. I love it, love it, love it. So in Google Analytics with event tracking, you have to group them to their specifications. And the first specification is to have a category, and hence the bucket of chicken. Think of these categories as big, broad buckets as a way for you to organize your event. So I've just gone through a long list of things. You have to work out how to categorize them. So if you think of your website, you'll go, here's our category, which is a bucket of chicken. The next step in event tracking is the action. Now, the action is always the doing of whatever it is that you're tracking that sits underneath that category. So, for example, I am eating the fried chicken. So my category is bucket of chicken. The action, the doing, I am eating a piece of chicken, sorry. And then the third and final part of the description is to give it a label. And there's my lovely face on some hot sauce. This is to further describe the doing. So you've got, in our example, chicken thigh with hot sauce. So if you think about your marketing and to maybe not scare the children of my face on a piece of hot sauce, think about your videos that we just talked about. If you have lots and lots and lots of videos on your website, then I would group them all under the same big bucket called video. Now, the action is the doing. So this would be played video, paused video, stopped video. And then the label, what was the name of the video that I just watched? If you had 10 videos on your website, then you'd say, this is the corporate video, this is the getting started video, this is the how to wear the dress video, or whatever it is that you've got. But you have to make sure that you group them in the right order. So category, big broad bucket, action, the doing, and the label, what was it that they just did. An example with the scroll reach, you've got people that can scroll down a page. So I would categorize that as scroll reach. The action is the doing. They scrolled the page. And then the label in this instance is 25% of the page scrolled, 50, 75, 100. Now, if you think about some of the other examples that we had, let's say you've got lots of ways for people to contact you on your website. You might want to have a category called contact, and then the action clicked telephone number, clicked email address, and then the label, you will list the telephone numbers and the email addresses, and you can track them all together nice and neatly. Now, the mistakes that I see in my audits that I do when I look at Google Analytics accounts, when we've trained people, is that a bit like when we talked about UTM parameters with tracking, getting your mediums and your sources the wrong way round, I see the actions and the labels tagged. And it's very upsetting when that happens because it kind of screws up with the reporting. One I saw was for videos where the category was video, the action played video, and then the label was just the page that the video was on, but there were 7 videos on the page, so we weren't able to tie all of this together. So it's really important to make sure you understand how to group these, because again, it's a computer program that we're talking to say, please fire when this is happening. Now, although I can't see the comments on this webinar, I can imagine some people are noodling to go, well, Jill, how do I do this wonderful magicness? I'm glad you asked. You will be using one of the other Google tools, Google Tag Manager, to configure these events on your website. And Aidan has got some cool tools that you can have a look at, and resources from a guy called Simo, who is like the god of Google Tag Manager. A friend of mine called Ed, who has created a free tool that will build basic tags for you, but then anything after that, you're going to have to get somebody who knows what they're doing to build this for you. Now, I love a process. So the trick here to succeed with really, really, really good event tracking is to make sure you go through a process. Now, that process for me, and I've rinsed and repeated this process so many times, and I've never changed it because it always works. Always start with your homepage. So open up your homepage and scroll right the way down to the bottom. And I want you to start thinking, okay, what does Google not track by default? So it's going to give me the URL, but let's take our lovely chicken example on here. I've got a telephone in the top hand corner. Okay, so Google's not going to track that. I'm going to need an event for that. I've got my Facebook account in the corner. Well, Google's not going to track that. Oh, I've got images that people can click through, a video that somebody can play. I've got a submit button that doesn't have a landing page for somebody to sign up to our newsletters. I've got tabbed content. I've got people that can scroll down to the bottom of the page. I've got accessibility tabs. I've got email addresses that people can click on and just not even bother with the form. They can just click on a form. Once you've done your homepage, because for most people, your homepage serves a big bulk of traffic, I then move on to what I like to call the money pages. Now, money pages are any pages on your website that are linked directly to your bottom line. So how you make money, your business model, whether that's a money page being you filled out a form and sales are happy, or you've ordered your bucket of chicken, or you've bought the dress, or you've signed up for a webinar, whatever it is, you've got a money page. So in this instance, I'll go, right, I've got a form. How many fields have I got in the form? Are there any drop downs that I could be pulling information from? Then I move on to arranging in a logical order the category, actions, and labels of all the things that I found from investigating my homepage and my money pages. And then, because sometimes you've just got a traffic like this because we've all got lots of things to do, I would move on to other pages within the website. Now, as a tip here, I actually just get a big old whiteboard or a big piece of paper and some Post-it notes, and I start working on what are the categories, actions, and labels for all of the things that I've just gone through. So things like, okay, I've got a Facebook link on my website. I'm going to have a category called social media company. The action, clicked social media account, label Facebook. So it's your Facebook account. Another one would be, right, I've got, let's do another one that we've not done, the form filled. So I'd have a category called form, and then the action, entered name, selected country, and then the label, what's the country. Now, note on here, because forms can slip you up sometimes with that beautiful law that just, you know, you can't have personal identifiable information in Google Analytics. Make sure you don't suck in anybody's personal details here, people. You would just have to put something like they entered their name. You cannot pull in their data. You will get a massive fine and your data will be taken away from you. And I don't know which one's worse. Obviously the fine, but yeah. You do your category, actions, and labels. And I do this in a Post-it note situation because when I'm brainstorming on my category, actions, and labels, you know, you make mistakes and you slowly start to realize that you may have used the same label for an action that belongs to another category. And this is a mistake that I see when I do audits. I'll have somebody create an action, which is the doing, called click, which is also fired for something totally different, which then, as you can imagine, causes problems with the data because they might be over-reporting on an action that actually belongs to something else on the website. So it's always a really good best practice to review the things that you want to track and then work out the category, actions, and labels, and then put them into a beautiful funnel. Now, the reason why I do this is because it gives me an idea of understanding that consumer behavior. I'm working on some templates at the moment that are not quite ready yet, but I am working on them to map out the different types of categories, actions, and labels from top to bottom of somebody hitting your website. So if you think about this from what we've just talked about, somebody arrives on your website and they're bothered enough to scroll. They move their damn finger on a mobile device and just scoochie down your web page. They then checked out your social media. They then clicked on some images. They watched a little bit of your video. They checked out your Instagram feed. They went onto your money page and started tabbing through content about a product description, for example. They then added to basket. They added to favorites. They then decided that they are going to buy. They started to fill out the form. They very nearly finished the form. They completed the form. Life is good. We're all in a job. Hurrah. Now, by putting them in a funnel, it's going to help you identify key performance indicators, which we're going to need when we're thinking about those beautiful goals that we need to create on our website, because I can guarantee you there'll be things in your event tracking that you need to have tagged and bagged in order to create a goal. So these are examples of what I see. So if you want to see this data, you go into your behavior reports, you go into events. And this is one I had for an e-commerce company. And I was like, okay, one category, you know, I'd like to have more than one, but you know, you'll take what you've got. And they called the category e-commerce. I thought, okay, let's have a look at the doings, the action within that category. And I got non-interaction and interaction. So I thought, okay, I'll click on interaction. Let's see what we get. And I got not set. So as you can see, there are 82,000 events fired within this 1 month period because nobody had sat down with the dev team to say, I would really like you to like group things correctly. They just said, well, marketing didn't tell us, so we just, you know, put in what we thought, which was not set or click or the label that, of the URL where the website was. And that's really not cool. So in this instance, I had a CEO say to me, okay, so we've got event tracking. How many people are looking at the product pages? How many people submitted a review, signed up for the newsletter? And I'm like, I'm really sorry, this information is useless. Put it in a bin and set it on fire. Like, you can't use any of it. You're going to have to go back to the drawing board, go through your homepage, go through your money pages, and then you're going to have to start to think about, okay, what are people doing? How can I label them? That kind of thing. Otherwise, you are going to get yourself into a bit of a pickle. Okay, so with a broad stroke, this is what event tracking does. Here's where it lives. So go to your acquisition, go to behavior, and it's all going to be in there. If you don't think you've got it, just go in and have a look. And then if you've got a flat line, you don't have event data. If you do have event data, it's always worth taking a couple of months data in terms of date ranges, so you can just see the full scope and see what's being set up. Are the categories correct? Have you got one action that's called click that's linked to like 7 different things on your website? So you need to go back and have a little bit of a sense check. Have you made sure that you're tracking absolutely everything? I did an audit just last week, and their main focus is on content and engagement, and they're not doing scroll reach. They're not doing time on page. And you're thinking, yeah, they're the ones that you want, but they are tracking, thankfully. Did people download a PDF? And then what was the name of the PDF? Are they downloading PowerPoint presentations? I'm like, fabulous. You've got loads of information about what people are doing on your website, what's the best content, et cetera, but they were just missing a few bits. So it's always worth having a little bit of an audit to see what is going on. Okay, so now we have gone through the event side of things. So the categories, actions, and labels, and there's hopefully some inspiration in there of things that you really, really, really want to have tracked on your website that you maybe haven't got on your website. We can now turn our attention to goals. Now, goals are what keep us in a job. And I must admit, I think out of all the audits and all of the many hundreds of websites that I've had a look at in terms of their analytics, about 45% have no goals set up on their account. And I think this is for a few reasons. One, you don't know what you don't know. And two, the goals are events, and if you haven't set up your events using Google Tag Manager to send that information into your Google Analytics, then you can't build the goal. And I'm going to explain that in a second. So I see people saying to me, oh, Jill, we've got a submit form, and because there's no landing page, we can't build a goal. Or, well, we just focus on videos that people play. And I'm like, oh my God, guys, you can totally build your goals. There are 4 different types within Google Analytics. The 2 that you're probably going to focus on more are destination goals. So this is where a specific URL that you can only get to if you have gone through that form or the process, and you will just tell Google what that URL is in your admin settings, which we talked about in the first webinar. You've got event goals. These are those actions that we talked about where an event is triggered and fired and the data is pushed into your account, and it is case sensitive, ladies and gentlemen. So if you've called a category video, then when you build the goal and you say it's an event goal, please Google, you have to say the category equals video. If you put videos, plural, computer says no, and it doesn't happen. So some mistakes I see when people have goals set up, when it comes to event goals, they just didn't copy exactly what is pulled into your behavior reports. After your destination and event goals, you've got duration and page screen. So duration, if you know that people spend 2 minutes on your website, you might say, okay, a goal would be people that spend 10 minutes or more, and the same for pages or screens. They look at 5 pages. If I'm totally honest, I will go through destinations and events first, and anything that's left over, only then would I give a duration and page screen, because in all honesty, you can build segments to give you that information, which I don't think is necessarily worthy of a goal spot, because you can only have, ladies and gentlemen, if we remember, 20 goals per view. So use them wisely. Now, the thing that I want you to think about when it comes to your goals is to not just think of the big, hard hitting ones. And this happens a lot with the analytics accounts that I look at. If they are within the 60% that have goals set up, they just focus on the big ones. They bought the car, they bought the dress, they submitted the form, and they forget about the micro and macro conversions. Now, exactly as the words say, micro are the little diddy ones and the macros are the big beefy ones. So the macro goals are, if these don't happen, we don't have a business. Did somebody sign up for the webinar, fill out a form, buy the damn dress? When it comes to those micro conversions, these are the actions that people are doing on your website that are giving you some indication that they are slowly moving through their customer journey. They are slowly working their way through a decision-making process to do what you want them to do. So if we take an e-commerce as an example, you would want to understand, do people buy the dress? But a micro conversion would be add to basket as an example. Now, what we like to do here, again, we've got a template for you guys to take away so you don't have to frantically write notes on this, and there's a link at the end. We like to map it to a customer journey or a funnel, however you like to call it, and we've created something called timer. So I always like to start with teaser goals. So this is right at the top of the funnel. People that I politely say are flirting with you. They go to your website, they scroll down the page, maybe they flick through some images of the dress, and then they were like, right, I'm off. I'm going to go back to my merry day. Investment goals, which is the next step of goals, they're showing a few more signs of actually doing what you want them to do. So things like, I watched your video, I downloaded a PDF, I added to basket. So once we've gone through the teaser and then the investment, we can start moving on to the meaningful goals. So these are the big, beefy, hard-hitting, yay, you bought the dress, you filled out the form. But I don't want you to just stop there to the meaningful, life is good, our business is working. You've got to think about the engagement side of things. What have you got on your website that you can track that show that somebody's happy or sad and they're really super, super great? So thinking about an e-commerce example, how many people come back to the website and leave a review? How many people upload an image of them wearing the dress or something like that? How many people come back to your blog and leave a comment? These are all events that you could be tracking, and with that you can build an event goal to see who's leaving reviews and what marketing channels, audience behavior, conversions, etc. All those reports in analytics can stitch back to all of this, which is really, really insightful. And then finally, retention, the circle of life. So somebody that went on the website, flirted with you, had a look at the images, invested, I watched the video, I gave you some of my precious time, meaningful, I handed over the cash, engagement, I came back to your website and left a review. Retention, I logged back into the account and bought again. I decided that I will be on your frequent flyers scheme. I've decided that I'm going to tell a friend about your products and service and give them a discount code or whatever it is that you've got going on your particular website. So let's go through a basic example. E-commerce, you're buying something. Somebody checked out your social media profiles. I can't move from an e-commerce site at the moment without them going, hey, this is our Instagram where everything looks so beautiful. That for me would be a kind of teaser, top of funnel. I'm kind of just getting an idea about the brand and understanding who you are. Then I might decide to sign up to a newsletter. Now, this is where an example of one person's micro goal is another person's macro goal. So if you're a lead gen website, you would be delighted if somebody gave you their email address. Whereas in e-commerce land, obviously I want your money, but okay, if you signed up to my newsletter, I'm building my database, and with that, I could then send you comms to potentially get you to do what I want you to do. Maybe I go through particular product pages and check out the size, the availability, whatever. Then I add to basket. I'm like, yep, I'm considering buying, but that's not a sale. My full sale is I've handed over my cash and and waiting patiently for it to be delivered to my house. Thinking about a content site as an example. So for those of you that are like, I don't sell anything, Jill, and I don't really have a need for people to contact me. Well, you want to know if somebody maybe clicked through calls to action. So I see a lot of websites that are going, hey, did you like that? Here's the next case study, or here's the next story. And you've got people that can be tabbing through content on your page, and I'd want to know what people are doing on there. Are people watching the videos that I'm producing on that content site? Are they sharing the content on social media? And with that, which content is doing really well for me? Do they subscribe to my RSS feed? Do they sign up to my newsletter so that they always can be kept in touch with all of the wonderful information that I have? Again, this should not surprise those of you that are familiar with me. I love a process. I equally love forms and things that I can put things in. So this is something that I am working on at the moment for the colouring in department. These are available. I have done 20 typical goals to 6 different business models. So there's a SaaS one, a lead gen, e-commerce, that kind of thing. So go knock yourself out there for you guys to use. The idea with this, of course, is to help you get there faster. So they're not set in stone, because I am not a mind reader either. I don't know what websites actions you've got, but it gives you an idea at least of things that you may want to look into. And because this is an editable document, it means everybody can see what we're tracking. You've grouped it to that timer process of the funnel. You can put some notes in so that it's in plain English. Hey, this is a goal for people that scroll to the bottom of the page. This is a goal for somebody that shares the product. When you do create the goal within Google Analytics, you can pop in the goal ID and what's the dependency. So in order for me to create this goal in Google Analytics, what do I need to have happening? And as you can see here, for this example, there's a big dependency on that event tracking being done and firing into your Google Analytics in order for you to create the goal in the first instance. And because it can't go back in time, it will only do it the day that you actually create that information. Now, some of you might be thinking, oh, 20 goals sounds like a lot of goals there. I don't think it is. I'd have more if I could, to be honest, because 20 goals for me, instead of just looking at they bought the dress, they signed up to the newsletter, I've got a lead. If I've got 20 goals, I can start to understand the role that my marketing channels play within the customer journey. So think about that. If when we look at our second webinar that we did about tracking and how important it is to track things so that you know your marketing channels are getting the right credit. For me, marketing is a bit like you've got a football field full of players, and you've got some star players. And if you recall in the acquisition reports, 100% of the credit goes to the person that scored the goal. Well, what about the guys that just got them to the website and they watched a video? If it wasn't for that Twitter promoted account that pushed somebody to your page in the first instance and they watched that lovely video, they would never have come back or be retargeted in the first instance. So what I love about analytics when you have 20 goals is within the acquisition reports, how do people get there? By channel, I can drill down by each individual goal. And this is one for a client of mine that works in the education space. And we've got 20 goals. So people that start clicking on emails, downloading PDFs, like start the application, finish the application. And we can start to understand what our marketing channels are doing in terms of those goals. Because most of the time, and it's not always the case, but most of the time, social media, from what I've seen, isn't the guy that scores the goal, but it might be the one that got them to sign up to your newsletter. So if you turned that funnel off, you may be saying goodbye to a lot of sales a little bit further down the line. Because the acquisition channel gives 100% of the credit to the last person that scored the goal, if you've got 20 goals, you can also look at your multi-channel funnels reports to see, well, which ones assisted in those conversions as well, which I think is jolly wonderful. So if you haven't got any goals, I want you to go through a similar process, and you could cheat by downloading our templates where we've got 20 for 6 different business models, and you can literally just delete or edit the ones that are more applicable to you, and then start working through your to-do list, which for some of you is going to be, okay, we really need to get our event tracking set up, because we can't build the goal unless we have that information within our particular site. So I hope that was useful. I'm now going to give you a little bit of a bonus round because we've got time, and then we will have some questions, which I'm hoping we have. One of the things that I really love doing when you have event data firing into your account beautifully, correctly tagged and bagged with category actions and labels, and you've got a load of goals in there as well that don't just go for the macro, the beefy, yes, they did what I wanted them to do, but also the smaller micro conversions. You can do some really cool stuff in your Google Analytics. So most of you are familiar with retargeting. I love building retargeting lists in Google Analytics, where I build a segment. So if you're not familiar with this, and you can always just Google how to build a segment, you go into your reports, you click the big red button that says new segment, and you can then just go through the dimensions and metrics. So a dimension, the channel, and the metric, you might have a particular number. And if you've built a segment of some useful group of people that you want to understand, provided that in your property settings you linked your AdWords account to Google Analytics, there's a little triangle on the right hand side of all the segments that you have, and if you click on that triangle, there's a little option there that says build audience. Now let me give you an example. Let's say I want to, instead of being lazy with my retargeting, so people that went on the website and didn't buy my new pen. I'm looking at a pen right now, so this is where I'm going with it. People didn't buy the pen. If you have a conversion rate of say 2%, so hypothetically 100 people come to your website and 2 bought the product, are you going to remarket to 98 people with the same message? Yeah, you probably will, but that for me is a lazy way of doing it. I would much rather build a retargeting list based on how far that user is within the journey. And if I've got event data, I can start slicing those segments and retargeting to the users that I care about. So the first one that I always go to would be somebody that went on a URL for a product page, clicked through the images, clicked through the reviews, watched the video, signed up to the newsletter, but didn't contact us on social media. That little group of people very nearly handed over some cash. Just send an advert to them. Follow them around the web and go, hey, you know, that pen, it's awesome. Here's a discount code. Come back. You know, we really love you. If somebody only watched 50% of a video and the call to action was at the end, I might follow them around with what the call to action was. Or if I can see somebody likes some sort of content, follow them up with a cross and an upsell. So if you've got those segments and you've got those segment ideas, build them. If you've linked your AdWords to property, which is what we went through in episode 1, then you can build an audience. If you click on build an audience, it spins you into your property settings, and that's when you can go in and either build it in there. I just prefer to do it in the interface, and you then just have a list and you can just keep it there and see what's going to happen. Now, as a tip, you may not be doing retargeting for months, 6 months, a year, but you want to get those retargeting lists set up now so you can have a look and see how many people is in that pot. And then again, without data, you're just another person with an opinion comes back in your face. You can turn around to your boss to say, I would like to trial some remarketing. I've created a group of users of which I have called nearly bought. There are 4,000 people in that bucket ready to go. If we convert 2% of that particular audience, or 5%, however you want to work it with your data, and you know what your product's cost is, you know what the cost, but that you can start to get a bit of an idea of what this is going to be for you. So you'll get it signed off, hopefully, which is fabulous, and definitely what you want to do. Okay, so that brings us to the end of the webinar. I thoroughly enjoyed that. I'm going to close the screen in a second. Aidan will put this into the notes. But if you would like to get a copy of the slides and a link to our resources, then just go to our bit.ly link here. I'm now going to exit, and there's the lovely Aidan. I'm going to stop sharing my screen. Let's see if I can get that to work. Oh, third one. There we go. And I'm going to mute myself now.
Always a thrill, Jill. So I did there. Thank you very much, as usual, dear friend. I think fair to say that was good. Good job. YouTube, lots of fire emojis as well. I'm presuming not burning the house down, strictly speaking, but more like in a fried chicken event tracking capacity. I'd like to think anyway. As you said, though, it is question time. Now, everybody has, of course, all the links that you mentioned. That's you guys, ladies and gents. I'm speaking to you in a multi-channel capacity here. Hello, YouTube. But indeed, there are a few questions come in, and they are the common ones actually this time, in truth. But I'll give you a break, and I'll pick one up first, as it were, so that you can rest your voice whilst I answer it. But I'm not going to give you a very long break, to be honest. There were a couple of questions coming in around Google Tag Manager. Now, to be perfectly honest, this session does not orientate around Google Tag Manager very much. Now, we focus naturally on Google Analytics. Commonly, we focus on Google Analytics as almost as a separate sort of entity, because commonly with, frankly, GTM, with the exclusion of course, of Ed's GTM bot that I shared a link with you earlier around, and what that Jill mentioned, often marketers are afraid to ask developers for help. And commonly what we find really with this particular piece is that marketers are maybe not that comfortable with HTML, maybe not that comfortable with JavaScript, or they struggle to understand the dreaded data layer, which Jill is talking about a little bit in this particular session. So actually, in some ways, there is a relationship element here between the marketer and the developer in terms of briefing, and it's something we kind of frequently encounter. And the other thing which kind of came through as a question, and I'm going to sort of answer it in a sort of summative kind of way, I guess. There are two things that we find that commonly happen with Google Tag Manager, particularly, that slow the site down. First of which is simply incorrect implementation. And what I mean by that is the whole site's tagged up with Google Analytics and the whole site's tagged up with Google Tag Manager, and everything fires twice. Now, as Jill mentioned a little bit earlier, it is a computer program. It is inherently stupid. You have to kind of tell exactly what you want. And what you're actually doing is you're telling two computer programs to do pretty much broadly the same thing. So they both fire, and your data is trashed. Well, that's a big common thing. Of course, that will marginally slow down your landing page experience because there's a lot more happening in the code. And equally, where that is positioned within the particular page and it is installed in the proper spot, that it is, of course, you're using tools like Screaming Frog, using tools like Semrush, you're using tools like Tag Assistant to make sure that it's all installed correctly. The other thing, which a couple of you mentioned in YouTube along the same kind of element, is this idea of speed, I guess. We talk a huge amount about speed. Everybody talks about speed these days. It's the thing. It's the new content marketing. And you can, as Jill said, very much focus on the things that are core for your business. So thinking about that timer model, so thinking about whatever your funnel might look like beyond that model, and identifying the key interactions that might be worth tracking, whether they be micro or macro. Now, what we're not saying is track everything. We are very guilty of in digital marketing. We say to ourselves, we say to our clients, we say to our bosses, hey, we track everything in digital marketing. Now, firstly, that's a lie. And secondly, we shouldn't be. And we should be tracking the things that are meaningful for our business, be they micro and be they macro. Now, if you track every scroll, every click, every interaction, when it comes to any tag management system, not just Google Tag Manager, you are going to have a slow site. Now, we're not talking about slow in the same sort of theme as massive images, hugely dense collateral on core landing pages. But we are talking about marginal decreases in speed on the basis of you just being very over-enthusiastic with Google Tag Manager, which, to be fair, we can't fault you in because it's an awesome tool. It's not as awesome as Google Analytics, obviously, but it's an awesome tool. Now, got my little rant in there around Google Tag Manager, secret squirrel rant. Couple of questions for you, Jill. Now, you highlighted a couple of templates in there, of course, around goals that are important for particular business models. We've got a couple of questions on Twitter, actually. Do you think there are very, very, very important goals that you see across lots of different types of businesses? And what do they what category do they fall into? Are they destination, duration, pages, or screens? What's the common theme in your experience?
Okay, so that's going to depend entirely on how the website is built. So if you have a website for having contact, and I would expect that whatever it is that you're selling, whether you're selling directly on your website or you go off to a third party, you have some way, hopefully, of, hey, get in touch. Here's our telephone number. Here's our email address. Sign up to our newsletter. Here's a contact form. If your website is built that there's a thank you page, it's a destination. If it's just a submit, then you're going to have to do the event tracking and then build the event goal. I think if I was going to be picky, and hence why the whole process of doing events top to bottom is that you might only have time and resources to go through just a few, and I would only track the ones that are actually directly related to the questions that I need to answer, which is, am I still in a business? Like whatever that business model may be. If it's software as a service, who signed up for the product, who activated, who's logging in, and who's telling something. Like you might only have 5 that you go for, but exactly as you said, Aidan, just because it can be tracked doesn't mean it has to be. If you've got a whole load of data, and this is for me, the biggest crying shame of data and analytics is when you have an account where there's a whole load of data, nobody knows it's there. This is with one of our clients at the moment that they've got loads of event data that dev have done. Marketing do not know it exists. So they are not building segments. They are not building goals. They're not using that data to make things better because 2 departments just haven't got their heads together and discussed what they were going to be doing. So I think hopefully to summarize, if I've got the question correctly answered there must be some way for you to say somebody contacted us, and then I would work my way back from there with those micro conversions. And that's pretty much the main bit.
Cheers, JQ. Following up on that question, because I don't like to let anybody off the hook, you know what I'm like. I know, right? Funnel visualization. Okay. Funnel visualization. 2 big words. Now, of course, we talked about micro conversions in light of event tracking particularly, and goals orientating somewhat, but not specifically towards more, I guess, the macro stuff. Does funnel visualization, in your opinion, help this process, or does it hinder it by adding an extra layer of data to what we're probably already tracking using events? In your opinion, what's the best way forward?
So what I really like with funnel visualization, so for those of you that aren't familiar with this, there are reports in Google Analytics in your conversions, and you've got a funnel, which is for multiple destination pages, fantastic for e-commerce, add to basket, fill out form, select your order, buy. But then when you've got goals that are not a destination with multiple steps, there's something called goal flow. And again, you can drill down by goal, and it's a lovely visualization. What I like about that is it scares the bejeebers out of people that matter, because you'll go, look, you see all these people that are falling off a cliff and it's red. You're losing blood, you're losing money. I've got some data and some insights on how we can plug that hole with some conversion rate optimization or some ideas on usability of where I think people are struggling, lay that with the voice of the customer, bingo, bango, you're in for some good goals. So I do like it because it can very quickly make you go, ooh, that doesn't look great. Because let's face it, when you're just looking at data vomit, lots and lots of numbers, it can be quite difficult to see the red flag, whereas goal flow is very good at showing you the red flag because it's literally falling off the edge of the cliff.
Edge of a cliff. Sounds positive. Sounds like a positive experience for our marketing work. One other question came up. Quite a few questions actually came up very strangely. This did not come in on YouTube, did come in on Instagram. I don't know. Spreading far and wide today around e-commerce tracking. Now, of course, ec.js is the back end of that, the slightly altered version of the standard Google Analytics JavaScript. Is or should e-commerce tracking be treated as an addition to event tracking or separate to for the purposes of reporting in your experience?
In addition to. So I want to know, how do people get to me? So correctly tagging all of my marketing channels. I want to go to behavior, and I want to know, did anybody play the video, selected sizes, had a look at the reviews, poked around? E-commerce tracking won't tell you that. It will tell you when I got the money, what did they buy, what was the product, what was the SKU number, that kind of thing. You're trying to get the gap between, okay, somebody went on the product page and then they bought, what do people do in the middle bit? But then that goes back to your measurement plan, doesn't it? Of just making sure that your analytics account is tuned up to the results that you need. So yeah, but if I'm going to like work backwards, e-commerce tracking first, because how do I make money? And then I would work back with my event tracking, because it's all about just working out what is the right thing at the right time for the business, because you can't do absolutely everything at once. Sometimes you can, but not always the case. You have to prioritize it. And I would do that with what shows that I've got a business that's working. And if you don't have goals set up, you don't have e-commerce set up, then you can't do that.
I'm going to thank you for that response, obviously, but I'm going to follow that question a little bit. It seems like we've got quite a few professionals who are in the comms space in this particular session. Now, obviously, very much related to marketing in the marketing family, but further away, should I say, from the digital measurement, analytics, data-driven stuff than some of the other channels might be. So we're thinking about paid search, paid social, and beyond. My question really for you, just to kind of offer some encouragement to the audience here, is this possible? So thinking about, this notion of, can I track it? Can I implement it without a lot of technical help? Is it doable for someone who is, say, a PR or a comms professional? Or do I need help? Do I need to brief a developer? Or can I do this stuff myself?
So for some basic events, so things like people scrolling, people submitting a form, tabbing through content, the tool that we mentioned that is still available, and Ed, if you're watching, keep it because it's fabulous, gtmbot.io. This is literally a case of, here's my Google Tag Manager account, here's my analytics. You go through and say, I want to track scroll, reach, this, that, and the other. And it builds all of your tags and triggers for free, but it won't do anything fancy or specific. So if you have got something like, I don't know, you've got some sort of search feature, yeah, it's not going to do that for you, but it'll do the basics. So for most people, that'll be enough. I, in the very early stages of being a consultant before we set up our business together, I just got a YouTube video and just watched a YouTube video on how to create a Google Tag Manager account, how to fire an event for a form. And then if you're really not comfortable with that, you can go to People Per Hour or Upwork or whatever and find somebody to do it for you with that brief.
Thank you, Jill. And with that sort of, frankly, a note of positivity and possibility and doing it yourself and being empowered to do it, because, of course, information flows freely, whether it is gold or otherwise. Jeannie Hill in the audience, hello. Thank you very much, everybody, is really all I'm going to say, for coming to this, of course, episode 3 of the Google Analytics mini-series with SEMrush/Semrush, depending, from us at the Colouring In department, and specifically the lovely Jill, who you've been regaled with tales of all things fried chicken and event tracking and analytics in this session. A big thank you to all of you, and some of you have come to all of the sessions in the series. So big thumbs up and big thank you for it, of course. We will probably see you on other SEMrush webinars, possibly in the new year. There is always a good webinar going on in SEMrush land. There's some particularly good stuff around answer engine optimization. Going live at the minute, a longer series running right up to Christmas. So that should keep you occupied in the interim, I think. But for now, from both myself and from Jill, and indeed also from the team at SEMrush, a huge thank you for coming along and participating with the session. And thank you for all of your really positive comments as well. It really makes our day, it makes our lives just that little bit easier, to be honest. So we really do appreciate it. If you do need anything, please do feel free to give us a shout. But with that, we bid you adieu. Enjoy your dinner. Hopefully it's chicken. And indeed, we'll see you very soon indeed. Take care and bye-bye.